What's up, everybody, and welcome back to 115 Gaming, your favorite home for all things Six Siege, the board game. I'm, of course, as always, the host, Ethan. I am joined by my co-hosts when it comes to Six Siege, Jack.
What's up, everybody?
And Barrison.
What's going on, Siegers?
Yeah, Barrison still doesn't have a webcam for some reason, even though he makes Six Siege videos. So instead, we have given him the honorary Goyo profile for this discussion. And for those of you who haven't seen him yet, he actually looks pretty much like Goyo, so this is not too far off from the real thing. So what we're doing today is something interesting. I don't know if this is even going to turn into a worthwhile discussion, but I just thought it'd be kind of fun. It's been over a year now since we have received the physical copies of Six Siege, the board game. We at 115, we posted a review. We've done a bunch of gameplay videos together, the three of us, both in person and online. And we've done, like discussions of operators and things. And a lot has changed since then, which we'll get into, right? Like the game has changed companies, and now there's new expansions coming out, which we didn't think was going to happen. So it's just been, just a lot of stuff has happened since then. And I kind of just wanted to come back and not really do a full review, but just kind of like a discussion with the three of us here. Now that it's been over a year of Six Siege, and just see if our thoughts on it have changed at all, if we still feel the same way about it, and just kind of, I don't know, just kind of chillax and just talk casually about the game. So we'll see how this goes. I figured I didn't really write down a structure or anything, but I guess what we could do is, firstly, if this is the first time anybody is seeing a 115 video, we could go around, introduce ourselves, and maybe just talk a bit about, I don't know, how we found the game, and just like we can just do a quick brief, like here's how we feel about it now. So Jack, would you like to go first? How did you find Six Siege, the board game?
I was thinking about this a little while ago. I'm pretty sure what happened was I was browsing Kickstarter and I saw the page for the Six Siege board game, and I texted you, Ethan, and I was like, wow, they'll make anything into a board game nowadays. Because we had just recently had a discussion about how a lot of video game board game adaptations suck. And so I was like, "Oh, a Six Siege board game, great! They're gonna ruin it." And then I saw that there was a TTS module because this is like it was pretty soon after the campaign launched. It was like the day or two after it launched, I think. And I was like, "Well, we could try it out because it looks cool, but I bet it's not that fun to play." And we played one game, like read the rules, played one game. I know we got a bunch of rules wrong, but even at that point, like we both finished the game and we're like, dude, that was insane. This is so good. Um and yeah, from there we've just kind of never looked back. I think between TTS and in person, Ethan, I know you were logging plays for a while. I think we both have over 100 plays of this game at this point. It is something that instantly grabbed me because I played tabletop war games before, a lot of different skirmish games. Instantly became one of the best ones I've ever played. And the more I've played it, the more I've just really kind of reinforced that idea in my head that it is the best skirmish game on the market right now. So
I remember because the Rainbow Six is my favorite multiplayer video game of all time. And
yeah.
so, and I've constantly been trying to get like Jack and the guys who we roomed with at college to like form like a regular Siege group. And it happened for a couple weeks, but then, once you kind of get past that first level of Siege knowledge, and then it gets really competitive and sweaty if you want to advance, all the other guys kind of fell off, even though I know you guys like kind of enjoyed the game. It was just, it takes too much investment for you to really play Siege. Like I just remember us talking, being like, "Wow, it's gonna be terrible. Like they're gonna ruin the game, whatever." And then I played it for the first time. It was great, and I don't know if I fell in love with it immediately. I just remember thinking, "Wow, this is really impressive what they did." But then I think we just kind of played it a couple more times, and it slowly I was like, "Wow, this game is really really good." And we were just kind of playing it privately to ourselves. And I don't know if as a fellow YouTuber I could say something like this, but one of the reasons this game inspired us to start a YouTube channel specifically about this game is that I did not like the quality of the gameplay videos that were on YouTube at the time, because MG did like this whole marketing campaign for the Kickstarter launch. So like a bunch of YouTubers got physical prototype copies, and they were all filming gameplay videos. What it came like a lot of them, it came off as if they were just playing it for the first time, and so just like so it's really not fair to make fun of them, because I know we were doing the same mistakes when we first started. But it just kind of annoyed me as we were waiting for the game to come out. When I wanted to go watch gameplay videos, it was like really bad, really bad gameplay videos. Like just the strategy and the way the games played out were just not fun to watch. So that kind of inspired me, and that's when I messaged Jack, and I was like, I think this is the game that we can make videos about, because we've been wanting to do YouTube videos on some kind of board gaming thing for a while, and we couldn't find one that had not already been covered extensively from other people,
Yeah.
basically. And I felt like Six Siege, there was a good niche there, and through there we met Barrison.
Yeah.
So Barrison, unlike us, is not a board gamer. So Barrison, how did you even get connected to the game?
So I was actually just like scrolling on Facebook one day, and then it was kind of just like when all of those really annoying ads just pop up constantly as you're like doom scrolling and whatnot. And then next thing I know, I like flip through, and then I see something about Rainbow Six Siege. Now, prior to seeing that advertised, because it was originally advertised on Kickstarter, but prior to seeing that, I had played Six Siege on Xbox when it came out. Played for however long. Eventually, just kind of like fell off for me. But I ended up discovering the pro league scene, and I would watch that on Twitch. And then that sort of just kind of became like an obsession of mine. Like I didn't really play; I just watched. But like, and I still to this day continue to watch pro league. I've been watching it for years. So when I did see the advertisement on Facebook, I was like, hold up, wait a minute, what is this? And then I went and checked it out, and then by the time I had looked at it, I think we had about like 2 weeks or something before the campaign had actually started. At least for me, that gave me enough time to figure out, is this something that I would actually want. But I mean, I was like looking through, reading everything. I really liked it, and then I don't remember how I got into the Concilium Discord. I'm pretty sure I just maybe got an invite, or I had asked in the Mythic Games Discord at some point. And then I got in there, and then yeah, ran into you guys. I know you guys were making videos, and I was highly obsessed. Like my ADHD kicked in, and I was just like locked in on it.
Yeah,
And that's kind of how I've been. We all know now that I've been taking it a bit too seriously. That is my flaw, but like that's just how fixated and how much in love with this game that I am.
I don't know if I would say you take it so seriously more than us. I think it's just that because you're not a board gamer and we are, our attentions are split through other games, and you only focus on this one game.
I have a problem.
Yeah, I think so. If I remember correctly, the two people. This was crazy. Actually, is we were making. I started making these videos because this is before Jack and I. We didn't live close together, so we were kind of like Jack was kind of helping me write some of these videos, and I was putting them together. And what's crazy is we were just kind of making them for ourselves, pretty much. And the first two people who like got connected to the videos was Barrison. So like he reached out, and then either through the Concilium Discord or whatever. I remember because I remember you started leaving comments on the videos, Bear, pretty early. And then two, one of the developers of the game, JB, who we've all talked with many times, and he's super cool. He found the videos almost instantly once we started making them, which was really crazy. And then he started connecting with us, and that led to us being able to talk with him about the game, which was super helpful and awesome, to be honest. And that was not something I expected at all. He like was giving us feedback on our videos or agreeing or disagreeing with things we were saying, and so that was just like really cool. I wasn't expecting that. And what I love about 115 gaming is it's not like a big channel, but what I love is that we've cultivated this little niche audience of like hundreds of people who love this game, and are just like super cool with the videos, like that we always get good engagement with the people in the Discord that we're in, and the people who come for Siege. And so like I like so I like how basically this spawned this YouTube channel pretty much, which is why I think it's fun to do a video like this, to just go back and think about that. We wouldn't have 115 gaming without Six Siege, and that's why Six Siege, even if we cover other games, Six Siege will definitely always be like a core feature. Six Siege is one of the most competitive games I think we've ever played. Not just what I mean by that is, when I say competitive, I mean like it kind of the strategy and tactical nuance throughout the game is so deep, which is something you'll discover pretty quickly as you start to play the game. So I guess that we can get into, like, I know we've pretty much already given away the lead, but like, has our opinions changed in the years since we've been playing the game? So if you guys have seen our review, you'll know that we called the game in our review the best skirmish game, miniature skirmish game we've ever played. Has that changed for you at all, Jack, in the years since we've been playing?
No, no, I don't think that has changed at all. Given that I've played more skirmish games since we started playing Six Siege, even with all of the probably the rules clunk that does have to get delved through, and feel like it keeps coming up for people again and again. Like the system that Siege is designed around and the way it's set up to play is just so great. I mean, it's coming from somebody who's attempted to get into and bounced off of a lot of large scale war games, like miniature war games, like Warhammer 40K, um, because of I mean, just the sheer upkeep of, well, I want to play this cool game with minis on a map, but I need to spend $500 on an army, and then a new balance slate comes out, and my army sucks. So that's super cool. I got to go spend another $500, right? You cut all that out. You have a complete experience in a box. That's really good. Like it's a really clean experience, and I mean that in that it plays very cleanly. I don't necessarily think the rule book is clean and the way it's laid out is clean. But once you understand how to play, you understand how the interactions work. The fact that you can have such an intense tactical competitive experience that a game usually lasts 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I mean, that's crazy to me. That's exceptional. And I haven't really found anything. I found other good skirmish games, but I haven't found anything that I play and think, yeah, this is better than Siege.
Yeah, just to put it in perspective, for one of the reasons I think it's the best ever is that almost any other game, whether it's a skirmish game or a regular board game, actually, this is even true of even video games and stuff. The kind of person that I am, I can get hyper focused on something for a little while, and then I bounce off of it and I don't really touch it again. And so, like, most of my video games, if you were to look at my Steam page, I've played for like 4 or 5 hours pretty hard. And if I've really got into it, maybe like 20, 30 hours. And then I just kind of come back to it maybe every couple of years and play it for a little bit. I never really get like sink super deep into one thing. I think, like Harrison, I've got that ADHD thing too, right? Like I just don't, like, I'm bouncing between stuff. It's the same thing with a lot of board games too. Rainbow Six Siege is the first video game that I continuously came back to every couple of months, like no matter what. Like I always came back to it. And Six Siege, the board game, is the same way. Like I can look at my collection right here to the left of me, and probably half of these games I play um, very rarely, even though I love them a lot. But Six Siege is one that we're always playing at least. I don't know. What would you say, Jack? Once a month, maybe. At least.
Mhm.
But like when we were getting into playing it online while we were waiting for the physical copy, I mean, me, you, and Barrison, we were playing with people in the Concilium Discord all the time, which is pretty rare. To me, that's like an indicator of how good it is. And like and we'll talk about this in a minute too. But since we didn't have the physical copy for a while, like 2 years, we could only play the prototype on online, and we played that for like 2 straight years before before we started feeling, I don't even know if we felt tired of it. We were just ready for new stuff, which finally did start coming out. But like if all we had was that prototype, I think we still could have played that for years. I don't know, Barrison, what about, like, what do you think about that?
Um, yeah, I we all definitely got to a point where it started to feel pretty stale just because we had the same content to play over and over and over. And boy, was it bad when we only had like 6 operators on either side. It's like, oh cool, I get to change one person overall for everything. Like if anything, like my feelings for it have increased. This game at its core, I still think it's, well, it's the only board game that I've really played. So I will hands down declare that this is the best skirmish board game to ever be made. But it's just like the desire for things to be better for it has kind of just grown from me because I was going to say the game at its core is incredible. It is amazing design. I know once you start reading the rules more and then you're understanding it, and then you have other people who are doing it. I know, like Jack had said, the rules can kind of be wishy-washy on things. Like it might be hard to determine what something means. But if you're not diving into it that much, like everything is still really really good. And then for me, that's just like where my intensity for the game comes from. Is because I think it'd be great, like as a community, should this not get as big as maybe we'd all like it to be. But I think that we already have a well established a community where we can collectively just make things better for it, that might need to be changed with community rule updates or operator stuff.
Yeah, I did want to talk about the rulebook because I feel like this has been an object of contention with people in the Discord and with JB. I know he's gotten upset when we've talked about the rulebook. I'd like to make it clear, unless you're freaks like us who, like we just talked about, play this game once a month at least, but sometimes multiple times a month for years on end, the rulebook is really not going to be that big of a problem for you. I don't think. I mean, I don't feel like we had like any problems with interpreting things in the rulebook until we all started going super super deep in the weeds on certain things and interactions, especially with like the expansion operators that are like that had come out and have come out later. I think like Bear said, the core experience is pretty good, and if you're just playing this casually every once in a while, I don't really think the rulebook is going to be that much of a problem for you. I mean, maybe I could be wrong about that. I mean, do you guys disagree or no? Because like I said, I think the rulebook I think that has been a thing that's become a little bit more contentious over the last year.
Yeah, I think that I think the problem with it, it is a problem in some ways, is that the rules were written, and like when I read the rule book, I can pretty clearly understand what the intention is for an ability or an operator or how a mechanic is supposed to work. Like I can get the intention pretty readily, at least I feel like. Unfortunately, maybe fortunately, what has happened is the game's been out and people have been playing it a lot, and so you get people who really heavily read into and dissect every little thing, and the wording is far from perfect on a lot of abilities and concepts and mechanics. You get situations where people who are playing it maybe like you said more casually, because I know something we talked about, Ethan, was that in that time period where it was mainly just you and I playing back and forth, there were some rules mistakes that we found that we were making and fixed, but largely we had a pretty seamless experience until we started playing with more and more people. People would say like, well, the rules say exactly this even though it seems like you're supposed to do this. And then we'd be like, oh, that's crazy. So on a more casual level, it's pretty easy to understand what the intention of something is. That, to bring up one of my personal favorite examples, obviously the intention is that if somebody throws a smoke grenade, you can walk through that smoke grenade. You just can't fire through it, right? Because you don't have line of sight. But when you sit down and somebody says, well, I'm really reading hard into the language here, and technically, if you don't have line of sight, you can't move into that. Because somebody basically said, like, if you have to have line of sight to move, and you don't have line of sight to a smoked space, so you can't move there. And technically, yes, they are correct. There is nothing in the actual rule book that states that that's wrong. Obviously, that is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense. The game wasn't balanced that way. You can watch the developers of the game play and walk into smoke. Like, it's obviously not the intention. So, I think that is the biggest problem with the rules and the way things are written, is that the intention is clear, but the very specific wording is not. So, any decently complicated, especially like a skirmish game with all these moving parts, all these different abilities, that's going to happen regardless. I don't necessarily think it's as big of a problem as I know some people do, because I have no problem, I have no issue saying, well, I understand what the intention is, so we're going to play that way.
I think this is something that, like, I agree is not as big of a problem as some people say it is, but that's because we're all playing casually. I do agree that if this creates a competitive scene, hopefully in the future, like we all want, then we need to be taking a look seriously about, all right, we got to define these edge cases, obviously, because people are going to be really, and there's going to be high stakes, if we're doing competitions and things, and people are going to want to win, and they're going to want to know what the ruling is. Like, can you move through smoke technically? Which obviously you can. So I think that's where the issue lies. Is some people are playing a little more competitively, and I think some people are looking forward to that competitive scene already, even though we're not there yet.
Maybe I'm just not cut out to be a competitive player. Maybe maybe that's my takeaway from this, but I don't know. What do you think, Bear?
I will add to it, especially with just like the intentions of the rules versus the way people like read into it. So I guess you could say, they had like their original playtesters of the base game, which, not that we know anything about the original playtest firsthand, but from my point of view, my opinion on it, it's like they had, maybe few people playing it. They're going to ask whatever questions they need to, if they need to ask questions. Maybe they were even more, I know it might be more like speculation, but anyone who was editing the rule book or writing it, it was more of like they were given a description of how a mechanic is. They wrote it down in that way, even though that maybe wasn't supposed to happen. But you like start with a small playtest group. Depending on how in depth they're getting, they can only cover like so much of maybe the hidden secret stuff that you can do. But then when the game came to us, we were a little bit bigger group,
Mm.
so there were things that I guess I would say that we found that the first playtest group didn't find. And good questions for us to ask. There was a lot that we had learned from it that we didn't know previously, and then learning some of those hidden mechanics or wordings of rulings helped us to apply the same types of logic to other things that we ran into. I know there's been some rules that we've been able to uh, depict and decipher ourselves without needing any help. And then I feel like we're kind of in a third phase of that, where since the game is now out, it's been out for a year, you could look at it as you have a bigger play testing group. So, like you said, there was just a few of us kind of playing. So, like, we were all already on the same page about the intention of a rule. There wasn't any reason for us to be like, no, that's not how smoke works. Like, you can't
Right.
walk through it because you can't see it. Like, we were all in the same mindset of like, yeah, it's smoke, you can walk through it, you just can't do things. Not to take away those questions from people asking that, regardless of how ridiculous some of them may be.
Mm.
It is good that questions like that come up. Things that we just understood the intention of and didn't have a problem with. Now this new group, they're picking some stuff that either we had missed or that we were just all already on the same page for, therefore
Mhm.
we needed no discussion, which is good. A lot of things they may just come off weird, and then there is the comparisons like, well, in the video game it works like this, but in the board game it works like this. I think it is one of those where like you just kind of have to take everything as its own entity, and
Yeah.
then apply the rules, like layer them on top of each other for like anything that goes with it. It's great because of just how much depth there is in this game. Like, that's one of the
Mhm.
things that I love about it. Rule cleanup or niche context, like just knowing what any and everything does, especially if we do have a competitive team. I agree with Ethan on that. For a high stakes environment, like, everybody has to be on the same page. And
Yeah.
that
That.
easily could just be, maybe it's just an event organizer's like, hey, this is my rule set, this is how I'm running, here's $100 on the line, like, by all means go for it. Like, that's, I don't see why that wouldn't be doable. Probably for me, if I ever got to that, it's like, if I didn't really agree with their rule set, then it probably would just be an event that I personally would not play in.
That seems reasonable to me. I feel I'm always the advocate for, like, I feel like, and I know, like, sometimes discussions get heated in the Discord because I think we all take this game very seriously because we love it. But genuinely, I'm always the advocate for, in your casual games, like, do whatever you think either makes the most sense to both of you or is the most fun. Right. I mean, like Jack said, because I think everybody's so focused on trying to play the game correctly all the time. And like Jack mentioned, when we first started playing the game, we were all making rules mistakes and we still had fun and it was still strategic and tactical. So, I think, like, unless we're talking about a competitive scene, this kind of thing typically doesn't bother me, which is why I don't often engage in the arguments all that much. But I do like that you brought this up, Harrison, because this is something I did want to talk about. Because you mentioned how when we're talking about the difference between the board game and the video game, and when we're talking about how you understand the intent behind something, Jack, I guess I kind of want to talk about like sometimes it can be hard to find the intent behind something in the board game because you want it to work like it does in the video game and it doesn't oftentimes. How do you guys feel about like has your opinions changed on the way the board game differs from the video game in some ways, like in the way operators work or the way mechanics work? Like, does that still? Because I still think the board game does a pretty good job of adapting those things. Do you guys feel that, or are there has that changed at all?
I like how things are. I think even stuff that you can't like do a one for one translation. Like I think that there are really neat ideas that have been applied. Mira, for example, well, she doesn't actually make a hold wall. She makes like a window that you can look through that's bulletproof, but then just adding like a slightly different element that like other operators can also basically do the same thing. Like I think with like Mira and Maverick, they do the same exact thing. But just like that's definitely not a one for one translation, but it is really really close.
Yeah, I have definitely the least experience in the video game amongst the three of us. So there's some things I can't speak to, but I agree a lot with Barrison that the way they've adapted mechanics, I can't think of an instance where they've done that I thought it wasn't done well. Like there's maybe one or two operators that I think that could have been adapted a little bit better, but most of the time I can see why they did it the way they did it and it works really well. I always have trouble understanding maybe is when like somebody who's relatively new to the game will play it and then they'll like comment that they need to change how this operator works so it's more like the video game. The game is like the video game. It emulates the experience, but you're talking about two separate mediums, completely different things. They're supposed to work differently. And so you need some things to change and you need to make some concessions to make those function. I am kind of the opinion that it is okay to sacrifice similarity to the video game simply to make something that works better in the board game. Because there are some operators who, from what I understand and what I know, basically function nothing like how they do in a video game. Right? Their abilities are totally different, and they were adapted. Iana is the one that comes to my mind. Like you look at her ability in the video game, and I can't even think about how to begin adapting that in a way that isn't super clunky and doesn't make much sense. But in the board game, she's got these like this cool little three different abilities, but limited activation of them, and it allows her to fulfill a certain role. In the ways it departs from the video game, it's almost always a smart decision because you do need to adapt this IP, but you can't be beholden to how something works in a video game and say it has to work that way in the board game. You want to adapt the theme of it, not necessarily the mechanics.
Yeah, I feel like they do a good job of a lot of times. Sometimes the operators will be functionally different, but when you talk about how they feel while you're playing the game, I feel like all the operators feel exactly the way they would feel playing them in the video game. I mean, like Capcan, for instance, is like one of my mains in the video game, and obviously the way it works in the board game is I'm not placing little trip laser tokens around the board because that's obviously not going to work. You can see where the trip lasers are. You're not going to walk through them. So instead, there's this little. I have a couple reactions, and I can just trigger them whenever you cross a certain space, and that feels like Capcan, but obviously functionally it's very different. And I feel like when you look at all the operators across the board and the maps, that even if they don't quite work exactly functionally how they do in the video game, they always feel exactly the way they do in the video game. However, honestly, I've actually become a little bit more mixed on this. I wonder what you guys think, and I think I've talked a little bit about this with you, Jack. I feel like because the board game is very streamlined and a lot more simple. I say simple in air quotes there because it's still a pretty complicated game. I think something that I've noticed, especially since we've been doing picking and banning a lot, is even like if you were to look at each of the operators in a vacuum, I think they're adapted beautifully. I'm like, okay, that is a good way to do that operator. However, when you look at the operator pool as a whole, something that I've noticed is the different roles operators that fill certain niches or roles feel more similar to each other than they do in the video game. So, like for instance, I'm thinking of like let's just take like the hard breachers for instance, because there's like four different hard breachers, right? Both the video game and the board game, and the hard breachers in the video game all feel more different from each other there than they do in the board game. In the board game, it's there's only so much you can do destroy a red wall in a different way, right? So they're like the differences between those are very minute to me. It's like, okay, do you want to destroy the red wall from one space or do you want to do it from six spaces basically? Is almost the extent. And each of them do have a little distinction, but they're not so different to where if you were to ban one of them, I'm like, "Oh no, now I don't have hard breaching or whatever." Does this make sense? Like in the video game, when you ban something, you can ban something that's like ban a certain operator that's very important, and people could be like, oh well, they could take another operator that fills that role, but it's obviously not as good as the one we banned. Whereas in the board game, sometimes it can feel like, oh, you banned option A for a hard breaching role, that's fine, I'll take option B, and it's almost just as good pretty much. I don't know if I'm wording myself correctly. Does that make sense? Like they feel very similar, so it almost feels like there's always an option for whatever role you want, no matter what's being picked or banned. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, like in the I know like in the video game there, especially with like depending on what map you're playing, there I mean like you said, Ace, like in the video game, Ace is really good on this map if you're attacking this site. So then when you ban out the Ace in the video game, it makes it that much harder for the attackers to do something. And then just like, whereas for the board game, you do have your minute distinctions, Ace and Hibana, they do the same thing, but Hibana's gadget is not electronic, which could very well play a role in that particular game that you're playing. But like, they feel the same. They still do like neat different things as well. And then, but I know like those small changes amongst the different operators is what I really like the most in the board game.
They created certain roles within the game, and then rather than focus on each operator being as unique as possible, each operator is designed to fulfill that role with a variation on it, right? So you have your trappers, hard breachers, your fraggers, that kind of thing. Which I think for a board game works so much better than trying to make everybody feel as unique as possible. Because we talk about rules bloat and rules clunkiness. Something I think about a lot is like, what if you did try to implement every operator exactly how they work in the video game? It gives me a headache to think about, right? Like if every operator now, like every trapper now has their own individual trap token that you get to set up in different ways in different locations, has different trigger conditions, like makes the game worse. And so something that I think is cool about that, the way they've implemented the operators going forward for expansions, right? There is now opportunity in space to be like, okay, we're going to add this operator. They're going to be a trapper. Well, what can they add as a trapper that is something the game doesn't currently allow for, right? What is in a way we can implement them to make them functionally distinct and also give them a new like opportunity and way to work. So there's a framework going forward that now new operators can be slotted into without having to break the game to write in a bunch of keywords, which I think is cool, right? That's an example of where the rules in some respects were written well to allow for expansions and adaptability and things like that.
This brings me to another thing that I think would be fun to discuss. Another contentious topic, if you will, because I think Jack, you bring up a good point. Game balance. How do we feel about game balance a year later? Because my claim in the review video a year ago was that basically that the game is perfectly balanced and that every operator is equally viable in multiple scenarios, and there's not a weak operator, there's not an OP operator, and I know for a fact that people do not disagree with that take at all, because there's definitely ops that people have identified as OP or ops that are terrible. So, I know that the community feels differently about that at this point. What about you guys?
Do we have 3 hours to talk?
Maybe this could be a whole separate discussion we could do at some point.
I'll keep it short. Since we've been able to put the time into the game, us three as well as like other people within the different discords, like it is plain as day that there are things that could be fixed. There are operators that just function better than other operators, and it's kind of like I guess you could kind of tack that into just like the streamline of the game. It's like, well, I don't need to bring this operator that counters your operator because I can just bring someone who is just inherently better because of their operator stats and like their gadget, which can be annoying. At least whenever I think about it, I guess I probably think about it like in the worst way possible. Like I also really like to play defense, so I might be a little bit biased. I I don't want defense to be almost impossible to play. And then just now, sometimes these games that I play, I'm just like, man, this is really, really hard to deal with. It works out for me sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't. That is just the state of the game. But
You get as close to you can as a balanced state, and that's the best place to call it because you I don't think you can really have a perfectly balanced state in the game. That being said, I mean, I think Siege is remarkably well balanced considering how much content there is. It does blow me away how I think the game is more balanced than a lot of people give it credit for because they play one game and get caught out by a Mira, and now they feel like Mira's overpowered. But like you play the board game again and again, and you see a lot of these operators actually they fall fairly into the balanced category. Like Bear said, I think what has been discovered and what you can't really dispute at this point is that some operators are just better at what they do than others, and some operators are just worse at what they're trying to do than others. I mean, I think people bring up all the time the air jabs. Um, Nobody understands how her ability is supposed to be useful, right? Like I mean, I think everyone agrees that she has like a cool idea, but functionally in the game, there is maybe like 3% of 5% of the time where it makes sense to use her ability instead of just shooting or throwing a grenade or something, right? So some are just better than others. Some work better, some play better, some are way more versatile than others. Um, like operators like Buck, right, who has a lot of versatility on pretty much every map, whereas some operators have cool abilities, but you can only use them maybe once a game if you get into a good situation. So this is a longer discussion that I know we won't get into, but the difference between a casual gameplay balance and a competitive gameplay balance is that I think the game from a casual perspective is pretty much perfectly balanced. Like if you're just playing infrequently with your friends, you're picking what sounds cool, the game is remarkably well balanced. And there's very little you're going to do to break it because if you just play what sounds fun and you play maps and it's every once in a while, there's nothing that emerges as being overpowered, at least in my experience and from what I've seen. It is when you get into that more competitive, like I'm playing 1 to 2 to 3 times a week mindset, and I want to determine the most effective team, right? Bear's famous team comp videos, right? Like where you're getting together, you're figuring out what a perfect team or a really good team comp is going to be. That's when you notice these kind of stress fractures in the system where, oh, why would I use Fuse when I have 8 other operators who can all do, or not 8, but like 4 other operators who are all trying to do what he's doing better, you know?
So actually, can I go the opposite angle from you, Jack? Because I was gonna say that I think the game is better balanced from a competitive point of view and worse balanced from a casual point of view. Because I feel like what I see all the time is when somebody complains about something being overpowered, is it comes from a scenario where people have brought in these ops and either A, the player facing against it doesn't fully understand it and so doesn't know how to counteract it, or neither player fully read the ability until it gets triggered. So like this is where I'm literally thinking about Buck because people complain about Buck, or actually let's not bring up Buck. Let's talk about Goyo. Like a lot of people, Bear included, right, will say that Goyo was overpowered. There's a while where everybody was saying, "Oh, well, if you bring Goyo and 2 deployable shields, it's unstoppable." And I just feel like that's the kind of vibe you get from a casual setting. I think what happens is somebody played a game, they never played against Goyo before, and then they didn't pick a team or set up in a position to ignore or counter Goyo, and so they're like, "Well, Goyo is just OP." When I feel like when you get into the competitive weeds like we do, well, yeah, there's more struggle with sometimes the interactions and the specific rulings of things. I feel like once you get more competitive into the weeds, it's much easier to be like, oh, I understand how to play against Goyo. I know how to play around him better. And so when both players are really competitive, that's when I have felt like the operators are more balanced. Because typically, I mean, I remember when we were first getting our hands on all the expansion operators, and there were some where we were like, whoa, that's crazy powerful. But then as we played more and more and more, I kind of reached this point where I'm like, okay, never mind. There's always a counterplay. There's always a counter pick. There's always a positional way to go against it. So I kind of feel actually the exact opposite of what you said, Jack. I don't know if
I could have iterated that better. Yeah, so from a casual perspective, I definitely agree with you that there's a lot of perceived imbalances. Um, I think what I meant was like as to what comes down to actually being imbalanced, you only find those actual imbalances on a more competitive level. Whereas, but you are right, there is a lot of there's been quite a few people, right, who hop into the Discord, they've played 3 games, this operator's broken. Well, actually, everyone who's played this game a ton thinks that that operator's kind of lame. So like maybe it's not the game, maybe it's because you don't know how to play against the operator yet, right? So but you are right in that not understanding how they all work, which is I guess more of a knowledge issue because there's so much content in this game. Um it creates perceived imbalances, but I guess my point that I was trying to make is the actual the actual things that like there you can start stacking hard data to show that this operator is stronger than others. You can only really find that once you start to play incredibly consistency. I think a lot about like the root competitive scene. I I don't remember where I heard this talk. There's some podcast, but like where Cole Worley, the designer of the I think it was Cole Worley, talked about how like at a casual level like people just coming in, playing the game, playing what they find fun. The Vagabond does not have a win rate higher than any other faction, right? It's not broken and it's not a problem at a casual level. But when you go into a tournament scene of people who've played the game 60 times, they've optimized how to do everything, they know the best way to play, all of a sudden this same faction has like I don't even remember what it was crazy. A really high win rate for a game with a lot of factions in it. It was broken for sure. And they had to there's a tournament balance now that goes out to the Vagabond called Despot Infamy and I think a couple other things that balance it out to make it more fair to play against. So it is just generally when you put a board game into a competitive scene, you find those actual imbalances and fractures in the system. But you are right. At a casual level, there's going to be a lot more perceived imbalances.
this is something that I know was a big talking point for us a year, 2 years ago. How do y'all feel about the balance between the attacking side versus the defense side? Because when we first started, I was all for attacking is way easier than defending, and we've had a lot of conversations about that. Have y'all? How do y'all feel about the balance between like just the two asymmetric sides?
I still think it is easier to play on the attacking side than it is the defending side. I know you need to have, a rule set. Like somebody has to go first. I get it. That's totally fine. Two, just like kind of coming down to it, and then especially having these other players get like better skill at the game. Because for those who don't know, believe it or not, skill gap in the board game is just as real as it is in the video game. But it's like there's just like instances where it's just harder. To me, it feels harder to play on defense because of just all these things that attack can just nonchalantly casually do, and it's like it's not even their intention to do something. Like I know one thing, I believe us three had kind of mentioned before is like a lot of the attacking operators they just have some like bonus destroy stuff like attached to their gadget. And that gets really hard to play around, especially when you're playing against an attacking team that's running like four of those operators. You know, Callie destroys barricades and cameras. It's like, all right, well, I can't really do that. But then it's like you have Callie, then you bring thermite, and then oh well, they're also going to bring IQ and stuff, and it's fun to learn sometimes. And I know that I've done that. I've maybe played a game where I deliberately put myself at what I felt was a disadvantage to see like, can I overcome this? What can I learn from this to be able to do that? And then sometimes I know my biggest revelation that I had was I took one of Jack's ideas on Chalet with Maestro, and then I built on it, and then I sort of just had this thought of like, oh, well, my defense is always going to get broken into. That's fine. What I need to do is to make my opponent use. I need to put them in a position where do they want to use it early or are they going to hold it late? And but I don't. I think those opportunities are not as abundant.
I mean, defense is always going to be a little bit harder to play just because there's so much more front loading. Unfortunately, a part that's really hard to learn about defense is if you set up in a bad way, you're probably just going to lose within the first 2 rounds because if the attacker can just completely get access to the map and you didn't think about them coming that direction, then yeah, we've all been there. They could just stampede through you.
Like my thoughts have changed on it a little bit, but like I think attack, the thing that make that in my head, I think the reason attack might be a little easier is it's just more flexible, and defense is more, um, it's just more not. What's the opposite of flexible? It's more inflexible. Because like Jack said, if you pick the wrong operators or you set up one token or one gadget in a position that's not great, you could lose the game in round one because you put that one barbed wire token one square to the left and it should have been one square to the right, and now I was able to get in and exploit you. I mean, literally the last gameplay video Jack and I did, you can see I got completely screwed because of the way I set up, like completely. And I lost, what was it, round 2 or 3? It was really bad. I don't remember. I haven't been playing well
Was
the
the
last couple games, okay?
was the game recorded?
Yeah, it was the last one on our
Oh,
channel on Clubhouse.
that's why you lost, because you recorded it.
Yeah,
Remember, don't record your games.
that's the problem. Yeah, that's the problem. So, like, I think with defense is, it's so weird because I think if you had a perfect defense setup and a perfect attack setup, I think both sides are equally balanced. But because the onus is on the defense side to set up the map at the beginning, like Jack said, that the front loading there, like just one small, and that's what's crazy. It's not like, okay, if you make a bunch of mistakes, it literally can be you have a perfect setup, but one misstep in the setup could cost you the entire game, which is crazy,
Yeah,
right?
it feels good when you like, at least on the defensive side, it feels really good when you know what you're doing. You
Mhm.
know what your setup is, and it's at that point it's like you you take bank for instance. Like there is just pretty much one general idea that you can do on it, and I'll get around to video at some point. I'll share my secrets, but I mean you all have seen it. But it's like it's nice when it's easier to do. I guess that definitely takes away from maybe having to like delve too much into like, well, what do I want to do? Where do I want to put this piece? And it's kind of just like I know exactly what I'm trying to do, but I can also make some minor changes here and there, but still functionally get the same game plan that I want to run.
What I have discovered is that Six Siege becomes more and more like chess every day to me because
Yes.
what I have learned, and maybe Bear taught me this, but the best way to play defense is to spend time outside of playing the game studying the maps and putting together defensive team comps, because when you don't have the timer on you and you're just like looking at a map with these 5 operators, you're like, all right, what is the best setup I could do? And you can like min max and have like an hour to set up. Those are the best games I've ever had.
I
And
I think
that's kind of what you have to
sorry,
do.
go ahead.
I just think that's kind of what you have to do when you get to like the competitive level that I think that we're at, because I think that's why I struggle with defense is when I haven't gotten to study a map yet, or I haven't pieced together an exact plan before the game happens, if that makes sense. So it's kind of like chess in
Yeah.
that sense, that you can study the principles and the core strategy all you want, but then you have to get to a certain point where you're like, all right, well now you have to study openings and patterns and stuff. And I've kind of feel like I've got to that point with Siege almost.
Yeah. I have 739 hours in Tabletop Simulator.
And about 70% of that is Bear messing around by himself, studying maps and angles and
Dude,
Get the
sightlines.
map.
it's probably like 85% of it's that.
All that to say, I think both sides are more balanced than I gave it credit for a couple years ago, but defense is still easier to screw up.
I don't know what the right way to iterate this is. I don't necessarily think attack and defense are imbalanced. I think the margin of error on defense is smaller. I don't necessarily think there's like a huge skew at a high level of play between the two.
Yeah. That being said, what I have discovered is because we had said for so long that attack is easier, I always think, okay, whenever I'm teaching a new player, put them on attack. But what's interesting is I think new players feel more overwhelmed on attack because they have to start and control the flow of the game. And so what's funny is I almost think doing a defense setup, like one of the opening setups in the book, and having a new player play defense is better because then they can learn the game by reacting to you being proactive. So it's like interesting. Like attack is easier, but not in the sense that like, oh yeah, like any new player could jump in and control the game. So I think they're balanced. It's weird. I flip flop back and forth because sometimes I feel like the attack steamrolls. Sometimes I think the defense is so good. Like how on earth are you supposed to get through? So I think they're balanced, but it's interesting. Like I flip back and forth on how I feel about playing each side. Dope. Well, I mean, we've been going for over an hour, you guys. Is there anything you guys want to talk about before we close this retrospective?
It's crazy to me to think about that technically this game has existed for 5 years for us, even though it's really only been available to people for a year. So, yeah, it's definitely I think a good time to be getting into the game because the more support that is shown to it, the more likely it is to continue being supported and produced for.
Yeah, I think I would close by saying if somebody has gotten to the end of this hour and 20-minute video and they have not played or heard of the Six Siege board game and they're like, "Oh, should I play it?" I don't think anybody will be watching this has gotten to that point. But if you have, um, before buying the game, don't take our word for it. Go play the TTS mod for free. You can join the Concilium Discord, which is linked below in the description always. You can join that server, and we always have people willing to play games there. We have great players that are willing to teach you, that won't steamroll you, that will be very fair as they help you learn the game, because we just want people to learn the game. So you can literally play the entire game for free if you own Tabletop Simulator on PC. So if you don't have it, it's $20. You can play the whole game for $20, basically. Try it there, and then you can determine whether it's worth it for you. Because that's what we did. We didn't immediately drop all the money on this game. We got to play it first, and we got to play it for years before we even got our hands on it. So that's what I would suggest. Come join our little community, play with us on TTS, and then buy it. Even if you hate it, even if you hate the game, buy it so that we can establish, put this into the mainstream and can establish a big tournament scene and get, infinite expansions. I think to close, just to sum up, how do we feel about the game a year later? I mean, I think when you look at some of the little weeds or things that we like to think about because we've been playing for so long, yeah, I think there are some minor things that I don't like as much or I think could be better. But to be honest, even with those like complaints or critiques, I feel like I love the game more and more each time we play it, which is crazy because that doesn't happen with games. The fact that I've stuck with this one for so long. So like to me, it's like even the little warts and all, it's even better than it was a year ago.
It's one of those like I said, I don't ever expect any game to be perfect. So for me, it's how fun a game is despite its imperfections I find while playing because I like to play games a lot. I don't want to play them just 2 or 3 times and move on. Um, and how do those imperfections, do they make it unplayable? Do they make it more enjoyable, less enjoyable? I think Siege has just continued to be fun, right? Even when somebody's pointed out something and everybody's up in arms because this rule breaks how you play the game. At the end of the day, it doesn't, and it's still fun to play. And maybe we slightly change how we play one thing, but it's a great game and it's still a lot of fun. And I'm pretty much always down to play it, which is tough to say about a lot of games. There are very few games that I'm always down to play, and Siege is one of them.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. I'm always gonna love it, even if I don't play my physical copy. Literally, the only thing that I do anymore is like sometimes if I am just unsure of a rule, take my I'll take my deluxe storage box out and then I'll take the rule book out, and then that's that's about as much as I do anymore.
No.
All right. Well, guys, this has been a fun discussion. I hope people got a lot of it. I know I had fun reminiscing a little bit and just reviewing, or not really reviewing, but just discussing the game a year later.
Yep.
If anybody's listening, tell us if the game has changed for you guys in the past year, either positively or negatively. And until the next one, we'll see you.